What is detail color glazing? Detail color glazing is when you need to add any freckles, moles, or you need to start refining everything. And this is when you can actually go back in with a little bit of white and add in some highlights and that you may have lost. But you have to be very, very careful because like I said before, white is opaque and it can really cover up all the work that you've done before. So let's say you have a highlight on someone's nose and you know that you need to mix a little bit of a light cadmium to bring that back out again. So I'm just going to take a little bit of the white, mix it up, and maybe I might even want to make it slightly more white, which is a little bit of pink. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Now, if I put this on directly onto my painting, it is opaque, meaning you can't see any of the layers that you've done underneath, and we do not want to do that when we get to this final part, right? So we have to make sure that we add a ton of glaze and really spin your brush around because one side might be more opaque than the other. So it's good to make sure you kind of just make sure it's super blended with your glaze. And now if we apply it, it's going to be more transparent, but a little bit lighter so you can bring those highlights back out again if you need to. So why don't we do that here? I'm going to kind of test it out and see if it's dry. I think that is looking pretty nice. Another reason that you might want to use a little bit of white is to soften any of your brush strokes that are looking a little bit too harsh. Why don't we try it on this area right here, because I'm going to zoom in for this. Because I can see some of these brush strokes and they're pretty harsh at the moment. So if I added a little bit of white, we can kind of soften these brush strokes by adding a little bit of white with our color and glaze. All right, at this point in time, let's pretend that we want to add some freckles. So how I would do that is I would probably just mix all of my colors together a little bit because I want to create a brown. So doing that, this kind of is really nice at the moment. I'm going to take this color that we've already mixed and I'm going to mix it with maybe this one right here. Since that one is pretty green and this one is pretty red, red and green are opposite on the color wheel, so we'll get a nice brown. And I like that it's stronger in the red than it is in the green. And I might want to take a little bit more of this darker thing, this darker color of red, because it has a little bit of black in it. So this is when I start bouncing around. If the colors are still wet, I kind of take from what I've already used because I know the color looks good. And so why don't we add a few freckles, and I'm just going to do some dots in no specific order. And how I'm going to do that is just kind of add a glaze in, and you can see, even though it is transparent, look how realistic these freckles are. I'm just kidding, but I am going to zoom in so you can see. You're still able to see your markings, and that's what makes this really special, is adding any kind of details like that at the end. Or say you have a fine hair that you really want to add in at the very end, you can just draw it in, and because it is a transparent glaze, it'll look more natural because it's sort of blending in to the background. And let me actually, it's hard to paint at this angle, but I'm going to give it a try by using a liner brush. So this is a very small liner brush, and I'm going to add a lot of glaze to this. And let's say I want to do kind of like a wispy hair somewhere, and I don't want to make it too opaque. I just want it to look like it is maybe blended into the background a little bit. So this is a very small liner brush, so we can't get the craziest line with this, but we can get small wispy hairs by doing this. This is all transparent. Added a lot of glaze to it, and this will be something nice to do when you're like at the very end stage, and just sort of add in these little hairs kind of maybe coming off to the side. Here is another liner brush. This one is a lot longer. It's a size 2, and it's called a script liner. I'm only wetting this to kind of shape it again, but I don't want it to be really wet. So the harder you press, the thicker the line will be. And if you barely press it to the paper, it gets very thin. You probably may be thinking, how do I paint hair? Hair really is done by the same method that we've been doing already. First, you would block in your highlights, midtone, shadows, and then you would apply color glazes, and at the end you would create details like this. I'm actually going to do this in a blue-black so you can see what I'm doing. What I would do is kind of start by creating almost like this V shape that branches off, and you don't really need to paint in every single hair. You just want enough to make it look like they're coming to a point. At this point right here, or where it opens up, is where the highlights would start to begin. So if you wanted to do something a little bit lighter in color, or say, you know, we had it kind of transitions into a warmer red because it's starting to begin to go into the highlight area. And warm colors pull forward, just like highlights do. Cooler colors tend to go backwards. So I can, from here, even start to branch them off into a warmer color. And then maybe in an area where there's a lot of highlights, I can even make it even more warm by adding some yellow to this. Not only warmer, but lighter as well in value. And we'll kind of just continue to add this hair up. I mean, and this is really how I would add detail glazes to my hair. But keep in mind, this would be on top of my highlight and midtone and shadow clumps that I've already painted in when I was blocking in earlier. This is pretty much the final step.